from the Gryphon Books Archives. Charles Beckman, Jr., Pulp author and jazz musician. Hi, I'm Gary Lovisi, and we're going to take a look at the file. It's a big, thick file of some of the books and material that has to do with the life of Charles Beckman, Jr. He was a pulp writer since probably he was in his 20s, and he was a jazz musician who met Louis Armstrong and all the greats of jazz. And he put jazz into his stories and his novels. I met him around 2008 or 9 through the mail. We corresponded. I realized that he was one of the authors of a lot of books, a lot of short stories in the crime magazines, as well as the Falcon book, Honky Tonk Girl. And so I realized that he'd been involved in pulp writing for a long time. I had no idea how long and how much and how involved he had been, and books that he'd written under pseudonym, and that his wife, Patty, was also a author. She had been a school teacher, and then she was an author of romance books. Charlie wrote some sleaze books for Beacon Books. He knew all of the writers of the period, Day Keene, Gil Brewer, Robert Turner, many other pulp writers and things in those days. And so what happened is, what I wanted to do was get in touch with him and see if we could do an interview in Paperback Parade, which I did in issue number 77. That was the interview that we did, and it has a lot of material. There's a picture of him with Louis Armstrong, and just a lot of, this is the article. They played in front of a Dixieland Jazz club. They did all kinds of concerts, and then he wrote for Pursuit and Manhunt. He wrote some sleaze for Beacon Books as Charles Beck and as Alex Carter. That was a Charles Beck. This is an Alex Carter. He wrote many books, and just a lot of great information about him. What happened was, I did the interview. I got a lot of material from him, and the material that I researched and that him and his wife sent me for the interview, and that's all here in the Gryphon Books Beckman file, which I'm going to show you. But well, I see how I should do this. I guess I should talk about the interview first that appeared in Paperback Parade, and when that came out, and I was in touch with him about Honky Tonk Girl, I wrote an article in here because I really loved the book, and I wrote an article, Jazz Meets Murder on Honky Tonk Street. It's a really good jazz crime hard-boiled noir novel, and I asked him if I could reprint it, and he said fine. So it was reprinted in 2011 by Wildside Press, and we used the original cover from the Falcon Books Digest. I wrote the introduction, and it is an excellent crime noir set in the jazz setting with just terrific story, and it's a really great novel, very underrated. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you some of the things in the file here that we have. They sent me a lot of material of letters to Charles. So he spelled his name B-E-C-K-M-A-N, but it was B-O-E-C-K. It's Beckman, but he made it Beckman to, it was published mostly as Beckman because it was easier for publishers and stuff, and editors to use his name that way. But so here's a letter from 1944 from Talmadge Powell talking about his stories that he submitted to a magazine. And this is the kind of letter you get from an editor in 1944. Talmadge Powell is a well-known pulp author. And this is a copy of that letter. And we did numerous emails back and forth. We did, continuing getting information, and I was finding information, which we published in that article in Paperback Parade in the interview, all of his stories. There were some kind of ads in the pulp magazines, New Detective, that had him listed. This is him in, I guess, for his book that was published in 1968. That was him back then, 1968. There's a letter from Popular Publications from Michael Tilden from October 18, 1945. We are badly in need of more material that contains the emotional values which you get into your stories. He had sent them a story. They said my baby killed. He said my baby killed, which was sent for Detective Tales. It's a little hard to see. These aren't the originals. These are copies, Xerox copies, color Xerox copies of old, aged letters from pulp editors. This is from March 1st, 1946. Die Dancing Kid. Michael Tilden was the editor at that time. This is from Robert Turner. Robert Turner was a friend of his, eventually became a friend of his and was an earlier agent. This is from 1946, Authors Agency. And Robert Turner wrote some books for Beacon Books under his own name, some sleaze books for Beacon Books. And Beckman wrote about 10 as Alex Carter, and I think 2 or 3 or 4 as Charles Beck. Here's a March 8th, 1946 letter from Michael Tilden, managing editor, Popular Publications, New York. Here is your check for blank. He covered up how much money he got paid, covering your short story Murder Wise, which I'm taking for Detective Tales. That's 1946. March 25th, 1946. Thanks for your revision for Die Dancing Kid, which I thought improved the story considerably, and I'm happy to tell you that I'm taking it for Detective Tales. Your check is coming in the next week. I want to see more. Michael Tilden again. Harry Widmar became the managing editor after that, Popular Publications. This is September 27, 1946. I have just advised Authors Agency that I am holding the Man Said draw for 10-story Western. The yarn is a very nice little job, and I'd like to see another story of yours right soon. Incidentally, Bob Turner mentioned Bad Man from Boston. If you still have this yarn around, I'd like to take a look at it too. Sincerely, Harry Widmar. So Harry Widmar took over from Mike Tilden at Popular Publications. Robert Turner was a friend of his, and who was, helping to market his. Well, he was an agent for a certain time, and then a friend just helping to get Charles' work into print. Charles wrote for a lot of places. Here's Season's Greetings from Popular Publications. They sent out a card at Christmas, and this is from Harry Widman. 1946, Season's Greetings. Season's Greetings from Popular Publications from Mike Tilden. There's a January 1947 letter from the editor. This is interesting. So what happened is the doctor wrote a postcard to Charlie at Popular Publications office. This is Charlie Beckman Jr., writer, and he wrote a little bit about the story that he read of Charlie Beckman's that he really liked a lot. Went to the publisher, and the publisher forwarded it to Charles at his home. Fictionaires Incorporated, a letter from September 18, 1946. I know we talked about this in a minute before. I was delighted to get your story, Bad Man from Boston. I'm buying it. It's a swell job in every respect, and I hope you can find time to send some more Westerns our way. I can certainly use a lot of material from you in this field, judging from the present story. And that's managing editor Alden H. Norton. Alden H. Norton was a well-known editor of pulps and digests and various paperback anthologies, science fiction, and a lot of other things. So he was a very well-connected person in the publishing field in New York. There's a lot of things in here about his jazz. Here's a from Chill Wills. You may recognize or remember the name Chill Wills. He was a Western movie star, and he wrote this to Charlie. There's a picture of Charlie playing his clarinet. There's a picture of his Dixieland Jazz Combo.
I think that's a saxophone in the other picture. Oh no, maybe it's
That's
clarinet.
a clarinet.
Yeah.
This is
It's a great shot.
yeah, that one. And then here's they had a where he lived in Corpus Christi. They had a jazz festival, and they would play there all the time. And he would play in all the local clubs and bars. And here's his band. Here's Charlie with the well-known jazz clarinet player, Pete Fountain, very well known. Here's Charles Beckman's star on the South Texas Musicians Walk of Fame. That was in 2009. They gave him a star on the Musicians Hall of Fame. Here's a picture from Corpus Christi Times from January 15, 1951. A young Charles Beckman Jr. And here's in Manhunt and in some of the other magazines, they always had the crime magazine digests. They had a little bit about the author with a photo. This is Pursuit from 1954. It's got Charles Beckman Jr. It's also got guys like Evan Hunter and Robert Turner. Here's a Dixieland Jazz. This is from the early 70s. Charlie's standing outside of one of the clubs in Corpus Christi. Here's some of the advertisements in local papers. They would play at the Metropolitan Lounge. That was where those pictures were taken. They also played at a place called the Golden Garter, which sounds good.
That'd be a good title for a book.
And this is his wife, Patty Beckman, shortly after they were married. And she became a writer, and she wrote a whole bunch of Harlequin and other romance paperback originals, silhouette romances. She wrote Louisiana Lady and Dateline Washington. Some of the romance books that Patty wrote, and some of the sleaze books for Beacon that Charlie wrote, also had jazz backgrounds or jazz settings. Here's two others, the movie and Enchanted Surrender. Don't know who did the covers on these. These are Silhouette Special Editions. The next one, Thunder at Dawn and Tender Deception. A lot of this material is in the interview that I did with Charlie in Paperback Parade number 77 in 2010, but not all of it is. And it's just, these are just what I'm going through now, are just emails that we sent back and forth and back and forth. Here's a newspaper clipping from 1972. The world's heavyweight jazz contenders to meet in Del Mar. And this Charles band. They had kind of battles of the bands for some of the Dixieland jazz bands. The Surf Club, Charles Beckman's band playing at the Surf Club.
So he uses the other spelling of his name, the real spelling.
Yeah, that's the real Beckman. So that's the real spelling of his name. But he took out the O and just made it Beckman. The publishers and editors just felt it was like a little more easy for people to remember, and you know, so that's what they did that. Here they are again. Jazz band. They did concerts in a lot of clubs. They even did sidewalk parades down the main street in Corpus Christi, Texas, like a few blocks. They'd go around the block, the whole band and everybody, people would follow them out of the club, all around the block. And I'm going to show you a city, a letter the city said allowing him to do that. So this, which is coming up. This is another story of. So this is Lady of the Roses, a short story that he wrote. So this, he sent me this, and he said, I wrote this short story hoping to get $5 for it from a newspaper syndicate. He says, my agent Edith Margolis, no relation to Leo Margolis, sold it to Family Circle magazine for $300. He said he was so happy. He said, I sent her a dozen roses with the note, roses to the lady for selling Lady of the Roses. So $5 story, you got paid $300 for it. And Beckman's book is out in hardcover. This is his book about jazz. He wrote a few books about jazz. I have a few of them. This is a newspaper clipping about husband and wife team of Corpus Christi, who, you know, both of them are writers, and a little bit about them. This is from 1976, Charlie talking about rejection slips because it's part of the game. Meanwhile, this is in 1980, local duo, writing pays the bills. They had a Texas Jazz Festival Society World Heavyweight Championship of Jazz. This is like the Battle of the Bands kind of thing. And they'd have different jazz bands playing in this jazz festival. And Charlie and his band were always there. And there's just so much like great stuff that he was involved in. Here's Corpus Christi. Your request for the Charlie Beckman Dixieland Jazz Band to conduct a half-block march on the sidewalk of Star Street on Sunday nights from the Metropolitan Lounge, blah, 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 according to City Code Chapter 22, Section 22.1, has been approved. Should we receive any complaints as to the volume of music or congestion on the sidewalk, we would be compelled to ask you to cease this operation. Bring this permit with you. So this was from 1970. This is the University of Oregon in 1968, where a lot of his papers are being held, and just a lot of great stuff. He was a really terrific guy, very friendly, very good writer, and a very good jazz musician. There's a picture of him.
Victoria.
This is the Corpus Christi Times, maybe 1985. Good Time Charlie, they call him. There's the band. He's up here. Some more questions. I had a lot of questions to ask him, because the more that I asked him, he would answer the questions, and the more and more I found out about him. So it was just an amazing, relationship. He passed away a few years ago. He's a really sweet gentleman, very talented man. His wife Patty's a wonderful lady. So I did the interview with him. That was in Paperback Parade number 77, and then I got his book reprinted, Honky Tonk Girl, by Wildside Press. Since that time, Audrey Parente and Rich Harvey of Bold Venture Press have published collections of some of his other stories, as well as a biography and some of his jazz books they've reprinted. So if you're interested in jazz, if you're interested in good hard-boiled crime pulp fiction, check out Honky Tonk Girl, and check out some of the Bold Venture Press books that they've reprinted of Charles Beckman's work. And check out some of his Sleaze books, some of his Beacon books, as Alex Beck and
Charles Beck.
Alex Carter and Charles Beck. Yeah. He wrote a lot of material over a very long career, and he was a great guy, and just I gotta say this though. This is one book you gotta read. This is a really good book. It's a really good book. And I'm sure that the books put out by Bold Venture Press of his pulp stories, from Manhunt to Pursuit, and all of those hard-boiled crime digest magazines that have been collected, those are also great. And if you're into jazz, read some of his autobiography and some of his stories about jazz. Charles Beckman Jr. and Patty Beckman. Really great people, and very talented, very charming, delightful people. And hope you enjoyed this look from the Gryphon archives, and let us know what you think. Give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.